Obviously, the wrist and arm injuries are more common. There are also many more injuries that aren't even listed that can happen. With the wrist, we do have dorsal wrist impingement, which is actually one of the more common injuries gymnasts have to face. When the dorsal end of the radius strikes the wrist bone, pain is felt on the backside of the wrist. This can happen just from all of the force on the wrist and from overuse. And then we also have the elbow injuries, which include elbow dislocation when the bones of the elbow are hyperextended and therefore forced to become out of alignment. Um, there's also medial epicondyle fracture, which is very common. This is also elbow dislocations and can also cause a fracture. Fractures on the medial epicondyle are more common in children than adults, but can happen. And also, the very common tendonitis of the elbow comes from the inflamed tendons near the elbow that can cause a lot of pain. And this obviously comes from overuse of the muscles and joints. Um, it There's also shoulder injuries. Tendonitis in the shoulders are also common in the rotator cuff. Uh, there is also bursitis, fluid-filled bursa irritated between the rotator cuff and shoulder joint, and also just tearing, the overuse of muscles in the rotator cuff that are due to other injuries such as the ones I just said, tendonitis and bursitis. This is all from overuse of the muscles and joints, putting them through movements they're not quite used to. I mean, the body is technically not made for standing on your hands. Also, head and neck, these are, the ones that don't really come from the actual skill, but maybe just accidents that happen through the skill, which include, falling out of a handstand, landing on your back, or landing on your neck, arms giving out, lacking strength for the skill, or lacking body control. That's why it's very important to have a lot of strength, balance, and body control for this skill. All of these injuries are very preventable. With the correct technique and body form, it's very easy to escape injury. Many of the injuries, however, will happen naturally from overuse and natural wear and tear that we can't really help. But once a student becomes more comfortable with the skill and learns proper weight management and goes through the shoulders and wrists, it is easier to not give one body part all of the weight, such as the elbows. Students tend to have their arms bent and have all the pressure and weight on their elbows. But then they start to learn that you can push through your shoulders, straighten your arms, not put all the weight through your elbows, and when you push through your arms, it distributes the weight very nicely through the arm. This helps the joints, obviously, from becoming very inflamed. And as far as head injuries, as a gymnastics coach, from the very beginning we teach the children, before they even learn the skill, what to do if something goes wrong. If you're in a handstand, what happens if you fall forward rather than back to where you're supposed to go? Many students will kind of freak out and land on their back, but we teach them when you're in the handstand and you feel like you're going to fall forward, to tuck in your neck and roll out of it. Key aspects and techniques. When teaching a handstand, it's super important to make use of mats and equipment to help students understand where their body needs to be positioned. It's a very awkward position, so using poly spots or bean bags or some sort of marking on floor really helps them understand where to put their hands, where to put their arms, how to hold their body, making use of walls, even having them hold the handstand against a wall rather than just telling them to perform the handstand really helps them. Um, Coaching style has a lot to do with this, but it's also very important to break down the handstand in different parts: the beginning, the execution, and the end. If you break it down, it keeps the student from becoming overwhelmed or from even getting hurt. It's very important for them to execute each phase before putting it all together. There are many key phrases and words that are used to help students, to help give them corrections rather than making them come down from the handstand, maybe giving them corrections while they're in a handstand that they can mentally say, okay, this is what I need to do. One of these words is squeeze. Very simple. Just when you say squeeze, it reminds them to tighten everything. A lot of younger children tend to be very wobbly, very loose. So we need to remind them to tighten everything up to help their body control. Another word is push. When we say push, that's what I was talking about earlier, not just, holding your handstand with their elbows, but pushing through their arms, making use of their shoulders. That way they can evenly distribute the weight on their arms. Another word is lever, reminding them that they can't just throw themselves into a handstand, but go through that lever position that I mentioned earlier with lowering their hands and lifting up their feet in sync. And then something I was just talking about, rolling out. Rolling out is a phrase, to roll out meaning a safety turn, and what they need to do when they feel like they're falling over the wrong way, to tuck their head in, chin to their neck or to their chest, and to roll out of the handstand rather than flopping on their back or crashing in on their neck. So those are just some terms that coaches normally use for handstands and that prove to be very effective. Performance issues and improvement areas. Obviously, there are very many performance issues that can happen with beginners and handstands. Usually has to do with losing balance during a handstand. That can happen many different ways. Shifting of the body weight, not knowing where to put my weight. It's very awkward. Do I put my weight through my elbows or my shoulders, wobbling around? So shifting body weight is definitely a performance issue. Overpowering your kick. When you're starting a handstand and you lower your body and kick your feet up, some people tend to overkick because they're afraid they're not going to make it all the way up. So you can't overkick. If you do overkick, that's when they fall on their back or hopefully will roll. The overpowering is definitely a cause for a performance issue. Ways to improve these performance issues: strength, strength, strength. It is very important for the student to be strong enough to be able to hold themselves up in that position. It takes a lot of strength. People don't realize it until they actually try it. It takes a lot of upper body strength, lower body strength as well, but obviously your upper body is what's holding you up the most. So a lot of upper body exercises and core exercises in order to tighten your core help so much during this skill. Also just drills, good old drills, continuing handstand drills even when they have a handstand, making them hold it against a wall to correct their body position. Anyone can just, go and throw a handstand without good technique. It's very important to have these drills available to them so that they are able to, correct their body positions and realize what how their body is and what feels most comfortable for them. Having a coach there to spot and teach proper body control is another thing. Holding them into that position rather than making them do it themselves so that they can feel what they are doing. These are just a few things that I have personally done that will help my students. And my summary, basically being a gymnast for 12 years gave me a lot of knowledge about many different skills and gave me so much knowledge about body control and how my body works, what body parts are used for what. You would never guess the amount of muscles or joints that go into these things, and especially me, I never really thought about the different contractions my muscles were going through. And it's also very interesting to see what kind of wear and tear our muscles go through. It's also very important, that I learned a lot more about injury prevention, how I can prevent my students from getting hurt while performing this skill. And also just how basic beginner skills like handstands and the sport of gymnastics are much more complex than people really think they are, much harder than people think they are. So that's my information and my project about my handstand. Thank you.